Welcome to the screencast of the week. Today we're going to be building a photos application somewhat similar to Flickr. Obviously with the time constraints we can't build something quite as advanced, but we're going to build a system where you can log into your account, view the photos that you've uploaded, and you'll be able to change the title of them using a bit of Ajax. You'll be able to delete them, and like I said, we're also going to create a login form to have a little bit of security. So let's briefly go over what we're going to be building. Here's my login form. I'm going to hit it, type in my credentials. When it does, it's going to create a cookie so I can access this main page. You see I just have kind of a basic outline just to have something to get us going. We have these Polaroid Kodak-ish photos. You click on one of the titles and it's going to turn into a text box. I can change this to man, tab off of it. And rather than doing a post back, it's going to use a bit of Ajax to update that database. Update the database asynchronously. So that's nice. And then also we have, I believe, a Lightbox plugin that we can edit. And that's basically it. So we updated our photo. We have this little success form at the bottom. We can get rid of that. Close that out. So we're using PHP and jQuery to create our login form and our photos system. So I'm going to click Logout, and that's going to log out using a query string. So let's get right into it. Let's see the best way. This is going to be a little bit time consuming, so it's going to be about an hour. So you might want to get a drink, get some food, and just relax and enjoy it. So let's go and get started. Okay, we have a blank solution. I'm going to go ahead and import a few files that we're going to need, and I'll go over each of these. First, I'm going to bring in some images, and those just contain the stock photos that we're going to be using. So pull those in. Let's see what else. In my JavaScript, I have jQuery and Lightbox. I will show you how to use both. You wouldn't need to edit those anyways. Let's see what else. Those are my photos from the sample site. We're going to be building those from scratch. CSS. Let's see. Yep, we're going to pull in those two files too. The only thing that I'm not going to be doing from scratch is the CSS, just because it can be really time consuming, but I will go over that file to show you anything important. But you guys are smart enough, you can kind of do the CSS on your own. Alright, so let's go ahead and create our first static page. So I'm going to add a new PHP blank document, and we'll call it index.php. And this is going to be our actual photos page. So what we're going to build right now is going to be, whoop, it logged me out. Just to give you a bit of visual feedback of what we're building, we are building this main home page. And we're not going to build it entirely, but we'll keep coming back and adding more as we continue on. So let's get a little bit organized. I'm going to create a JavaScript folder called JS and drag in those two jQuery files. And we'll do script src equals js slash jQuery dash 1.2.6.pack. If you don't have this file, you can get it from jQuery.com. And I'm also going to import the Lightbox. So we'll do jQuery.lightbox dash 0.5.pack. Okay, and the title will just be my photo website. Next, we need to pull in some CSS files, so we'll do that right now. We'll do link rel equals style sheet, and the href is going to be css slash default.css. Once again, I will go over that file completely when it's time. And the next one is called, this is going to be our Lightbox. Once again, this is something that you probably won't be needing to edit. This just adds the Lightbox functionality. Alright, so let's create our container div. This is going to be the wrapper right here, this dark colored background. That's the wrapper that will allow us to center our website on the page. div id equals container. And within it, we'll do our heading tag, and we'll call it my photos. And we'll put a small tag within it, and let me see what I wrote up there. Click on the text to change the title. Okay, next I'm going to create our logout link, which is going to be right up here. Now we're going to modify this in a little bit, but for now we'll just create an anchor tag. We'll do href, and we're going to send the user to login.php, which we haven't created just yet. And we'll give it an ID of logout so CSS can recognize it, and the text will just be logout. Okay, now I'm going to create my main section, so we'll put that in a div with an ID of main. And main. I think it's always good practice to comment out your divs so you know exactly what you're ending. And that should be good for our basic format right now. Like I said, we're going to continue to be modifying this as we go. Let me just clean this up a little bit. Okay, so the first step that we're going to want to do is create a PHP function that's going to grab our photos. But we're not going to hard code these in, obviously. We need to store them in a database. So the first step is to create a database. So I'm going to create a new database, and we'll just call it something simple like db create. I'll create a new table called photos, and we're going to give it 3 fields. We're going to need an ID, obviously, for each photo, and then we'll give it a title and a source. Now, in your project, you might want to add quite a bit more. You know, you might want to create an author field, maybe a detailed description field. You know, there could be many things, but we're going to keep this as simple as we can for this tutorial. So we'll give it a field of ID. It's going to be an integer. We need to make it not null, and we're going to auto increment it and set it as a primary key. So the first field will be 1, and then the second one will be 2, and we won't have to put that in ourselves. It will do that for us. That way we can have a unique ID for each new photo. I'm going to give it another field of title, varchar. 300 characters is fine. And we'll also do a source, varchar of 300 is fine too. Keep it simple. Okay, it's created our database. Now, let's go back and create another, it's created our table. We're going to create another users table while we're in here. And this will be the username and password information for each user that can access this information. So we will call it users, and we're going to give it maybe 6 fields. We'll do ID, give it a unique ID once again. Auto increment and primary key. Next, we'll do first name. Can be varchar, maybe 100 characters long. Last name, once again, 100 characters long at the most. We'll do email address. Say 100's good too. You know, I don't want to spend too much time going over this. Username, maybe a max of 40. And last, we'll do a password. The password can be maybe no more than 25 characters. Let's see if there's anything else I want to add. There might be, but I'll come back to that. Okay, so let's save it. And to get us going, I'm going to insert a little bit of information. So let's go back. Let's insert a user. And like I said, because we set it to auto increment and made it a primary key, we don't have to create that ID. It'll do it for us. So the first name we'll do first name, last name is going to be last name, email. You know, we'd want to perform some kind of validation to make sure that what the user enters into the form actually is an email address. But I don't know if we'll be able to get into that because there's just so much to cover. Username will be username and password will be password. Okay, we created our row. Now let's insert some photos. Let's go into our photos table. Now, to give you an idea of what we're going to do is each photo will have its own ID that will be done for us. Then for the title, I'm just going to put my photo, my photo, my photo. And then the source is going to be a path to these images, these stock images that I have here. So the source for each photo will be images/10.jpg, and then the next field, images/11, images/12, and that will insert our information. So let's insert one field. I'm going to do one, and then I'm going to pause it and do the rest so that you don't have to sit and watch me. So we'll call it my photo. And let's see where I start. So we have 3 through 15. Okay. This is always the most tedious part. And it's going to be images. You know what? I'm not even going to add that folder name. I'm just going to create the file name. And that way, when I pull this information from the database, I'll append the actual folder. That way, if I change the folder name, I don't have to change it in the database. So click Go. It's inserted that one field into the database. So I'm going to pause right now and insert the other 13. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. So you can see I've created all of my fields. I'm just going to click Go. And that's going to insert all of those fields into my database. So now we have some information that we can actually work with. And here's our SQL query that it created for us. Good stuff. So let's go back. And now that we've created a database, we need to actually connect to it, retrieve that information, and display it on the page. But I don't want to insert all of that PHP information into my main page. So what I'm going to do is within this main section, I'm going to do create a PHP tag, and we'll do require, and we'll call it getPhotos.php. Okay, and that's going to pull. It's going to include that information into our page, so we can just be a little bit cleaner. Go into my page, add a new item. It's going to be getPhotos.php. Okay, so if you go back, file not found, it'll find it in just a second. So I will get rid of all of this and create some PHP tags. And basically what we're going to do, I'm sure some of you have done it many times, other of you may be completely new to this, so it might be over your head. If it is, leave a comment and we'll help you. We need to create a connection to the database, create a query, a select statement that will pull the information from the database that we need and display it on the page. So we need to create some constants, some variables that won't change, that have our database name and our username and our host and all of that. I could store it in here, but there's a chance that we're going to be using that a few times in this project. So rather than storing that information specifically in my getPhotos.php file, why don't I create a separate file called constants? And that way I can include that file anytime it's needed. So we'll call it constants.php. And let's create a couple variables. The first one's going to be the name of the database. So we'll call it db_name. And we're going to set that to, what did I call it? db, I believe. Next, let's do db server. and this is going to be the server where your web application is located. For me, it's just going to be localhost, but you'll want to change that if you deploy it. Let's do db user. For me, it's just going to be root. Next is db pass. Now, I'm working on a laptop where I just installed this, so I don't have a password, but that's very bad practice. So you need to make sure, especially if you have this hosted, you need to set up a password to your database. That's extremely important. For me, it's just going to be nothing. But once again, make sure you create a password. All right, now I'm going to create a SQL connection to my database. So we're going to do create a variable called MySQL improved, and it's going to be equal to new instance of the MySQL improved class. And within it, I'm going to pass in 4 values. The first one is going to be the name of the server. The next one is going to be the name of my username to log in to the database. The third is going to be my password, and the fourth one is going to be the name of the database that we're accessing. Because remember, in MySQL, I could have 10 different databases, so we need to tell it what database are we looking for. So the server is going to be db server. The user is going to be db user. The password is going to be db_pass, and the the database is going to be db_ name. So you can see here, we created those variables and filled them with their values, and then when we created our connection, we're just passing in those variables. That way, sometime down the line, if we change the server, which we probably would once we upload it, we can just edit it here, and we don't have to go into every different page that connects to the database and change the DB server. So we're going to create, let me close this out so we have a little more real estate. So let's connect to that, but if it doesn't work, we're going to do or die, and we'll do MySQL I error. It's just going to print out what the error was for our own sake. Let's say, actually that's fine for now. So we've created our constants. I could even change this actually to database if I wanted to. And you know what, I'm going to, just because it's a little more descriptive. Database.php. Because I'm not only doing constants, I'm also creating a connection to the database. Okay, so we've created our database connection and added our variables. Let's require that. So we're going to do require. And it's going to be called database.php. Now we're going to create our actual query, and that's what's going to select that information from the database. So we'll do Q. It's going to be equal to, we'll do select. Now let's go and get a refresher on what we're selecting. Photos. Okay, so we have ID, title, and source. So we want to select a title and source from this photos database. So we'll do select ID, title, and source from photos. And really, that's fine. We're creating a very simple query. You can make it as advanced if you want. If you want to order by, maybe from oldest to newest or newest to oldest, or let the user select that. Beyond the scope of this, we'll just keep it as simple as we can. And now we're going to do create a variable called result, and we're going to equal that to the MySQLi variable that we created. If we go back to database, you can see we created that here. So remember, we created this object, so the way we can access it is using the dash arrow. So MySQL improved dot query, and we're going to pass in that variable that we created. So we're going to say that connection that we created, run a query, and we're going to pass in this Q variable that we created. Once again, or if that doesn't work, a die, and we'll do MySQL error. Okay, moving along. So now we're going to say if there was a result, let's display it on the page. So we will do, let's echo, we'll create an unordered list with an ID of photos. And we'll create a new line just for when we view the source. Echo that, and then we're going to run a while statement, and we're just going to say while there are rows in the table, meaning while there are photos to bring back, we're going to run some code. But when there aren't any more, stop running that code. So while, we'll create a variable. It can be anything we want. We'll call it row. And while row equals result, what is this called? Fetch object. So while there are rows to be pulled from the database, let's create a couple variables. One will be the title, one will be the source, and one will be the ID. The ID is going to be equal to row ID. Source is going to be equal to row source. And remember, these values we're setting right here are just the names that we created. So title is going to be equal to row.title. Okay, and now I'm going to echo, let's see, we're going to create a list item, and we're going to have an anchor tag. Now the anchor tag is actually going to link to the exact same photo, but probably in your situation, your anchor tag would link to a larger version of the photo. In order to get the path to that photo, remember, we set that in our database as the source. Remember, the source we set to like 5.jpg, 6.jpg. So we're going to link to that, and the way we'll do that is we'll link to images / and then I'm just going to pass in our variable, and that's going to enter in the source to that specific row, for that specific row. Okay, and next I'm going to add our actual image tag. So we'll do image source equals images, and once again the image is going to be the same path as the anchor tag for this situation. So it's going to be the same thing. I'm also going to add an ID, and that's going to grab the ID value because we're going to need the ID of that specific row in order to manipulate it later with our JavaScript. And we'll give it an alt tag, and the alt tag is going to be equal to whatever title we gave that image. Okay, let's close out our anchor tag, and we'll also do a new line. So that should make sense to you. Let's go to a new line, and we're going to echo. Next, we're going to echo the title. So remember, we're pulling the images back and displaying it on the page. So we've pulled back our image. Now below the image is just going to be a heading level 4 tag, and it's going to contain the title. So we'll do h4, and within it we'll pass in the title. And below it, we're going to create an input. Now remember, when the user clicks on that title, it will get rid of the title and pull up an input tag that they can use. So we're going to add that right here, and then we're using CSS, we'll hide that input tag initially unless that title gets clicked, and that will be done with JavaScript. So echo input type equals text. The name of our input will be title, that's fine, and value is going to be title. So the text that's going to be in that input field by default is going to be whatever value of title was pulled from the database. So with our input tag, now let's close out our list item finally. I'm just creating new lines because when you view it in the source, it makes it a little bit cleaner. And that ends our while statement. And then finally, let's just close out our unordered list. Remember, we opened it up here, and then for the information within it, we created our list items, and now we're actually closing out. Okay, let's see. It looks like I made a mistake. Yep, left off semicolon. Okay, so let's go over this again. I'm trying to be as descriptive as I can. In our main page, in our main section, we're going to bring in this, we're going to bring in this getPhotos.php file. So let's go into there. That file creates a connection to the database. And then while it's pulling rows back, we're going to create an unordered list and fill it with some list items. So let's go ahead and view this in the browser and see if we have anything just yet. I'm going to go back to my documents stored in localhost, my photos website. Okay, so you can see it's already pulled this much information from the database. We have our heading tag, we have our logout, we've pulled the images from the database. Now, if I click on anything, nothing's going to happen just yet, but the anchor tag links to that specific image, remember? But later, we're going to add in our lightbox to make that pop up. If I click on the heading 4 tag, which is right here, nothing's going to happen just yet. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-E to view our source and just show you anything that's absolutely important as far as layout. You see I've set a background color. That's this kind of darkish brown. If I change it to red, you can see what that is referring to. Our main container div, once again, that's this dark brown in the middle here. I've set it to a width of 764 pixels and set the left and right margins to auto. A few just kind of aesthetic things. The main, we set a background color. Set overflow to hidden so that it will clear the floats. I've added some padding, a border. We have these Mozilla and Safari specific properties that will add this nice rounded corner, which I use quite a bit. One thing to note, it's not going to validate if you validate your CSS, but remember, the point of validating is to make sure you're doing everything correctly. So if you know you are, it's a bit silly to remove something that works perfectly just because it doesn't validate. So if you must have it validate, remove these 4 properties. But remember, it's not affecting anything. It's only modifying the way your website looks in Safari and Firefox. Container H1, that's just affecting our title. Our logout anchor tag, that is right here. And I've just positioned it absolutely so we can have it sitting right on top of that little div. H1 small, remember small is right here. Click on the text to change the title. And I've just reduced the font size, set it relative, and pulled it up just a little bit so it's vertically centered. Main H4, that's the title of each image. I've removed the font weight so it's not bold. I've adjusted some of the positioning of it and set the cursor to pointer. That way, when the user hovers over it, it turns to that hand icon that lets them know if you click on this, something will happen. Okay, now we have the input, and remember, we've already added the input to our HTML. I've only hidden it for the time being. Some other just basic styling for our image to get this kind of cool, Polaroid type effect. The trick is just add 0.2 ems of padding, except on the bottom you add about 3, and that creates that layout. I created a class of hidden and set that to display none. Response, the div with an ID of response. Remember earlier when you clicked on a title, edited it, then at the bottom, I created this little pop-up that said, congratulations, the database has been updated. This styles that information, and it just kind of sets the background to a bluish gray, and it sets a border. A span with an ID of X, that creates the cancel button on that response div, which, in the top right corner there will be an X, and you click it, and it'll remove that. That is what is set up here. And I've just positioned it absolutely, set it to the top right portion of the screen. Once again, created a pointer so the user knows they can interact with that information. So that's a quick rundown. Feel free to modify it in any way you want. This is kind of just a quick layout. So we, right off the bat, are making some good progress. Let's try to keep going so we can get this done as quick as possible. So now we're going to set up the format where when the user clicks on the title, they can update the title, and without the page refresh, using jQuery and Ajax, we will update the database. So I'm going to add this form, because remember we're going to have that input field. So we'll do a form. Method is going to be the post method, and action is going to be change photo title .php. Let's go ahead and create that change photo title. Add a new item and call it change photo title.php. And let's get started with it. So we'll do PHP, and the first step is obviously we're going to be working with the database again, so let's go ahead and require that again, database.php. And you know what, I'm really bad about switching between using single and double quotes, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sure it's irritating some of you. Okay, require the database, and now we are going to pull the values that the user enters into the input field. So let's go back, because I just want to make sure that you're as clear as possible with this for some of you newer people. Get photos. Remember, we have this input field right here. So when that gets changed, when the user changes that value, it's going to update the title row, the title column in the database with this new information that the user selected. So we'll do title. And that's going to be equal to get post title. Now, because this section is only allowed to be changed from the administrator, we may not need to do too much error handling or validation. We'll maybe do a real escape, so we'll do MySQL real escape string, and then wrap that. But truthfully, it may not even be required, because if you're the admin editing this, you don't have to worry about any kind of SQL injection or anything like that. But we'll do it anyways. You know, we could do more. So we're going to get the title, and that's going to be equal to that input field. So go back. Remember, name is title. So it's grabbing the input field with the name of title. Okay, so it's getting the value of whatever was entered into that input field. And then the next one, we're going to get the ID field. And that's going to get right here. It's going to get the image with an ID right here. So if this is a little confusing, just stick with it and we'll get to it. So we're going to create a new update query. Remember, in our database.php file, we've already created our connection to the database. So we'll create a new variable called update query, and that's going to be equal to update photos, and set the title row is going to be equal to whatever was entered into that text box, where the ID is equal to the specific ID. So some of you may be completely up on this. A lot of you I know are very new. So we're updating our photos table, and we're setting the title column. Remember, that contains the title of our image. We're updating that title to be whatever was entered into that text box. But we don't want to update every single title row. We only want to update the one where its ID property is equal to this ID variable. And if we come in here, so we only want to update the title where its ID is equal to the ID for that specific row. It's a little bit hard to understand, so I hope that makes sense. Okay, so once again, we'll do result. Result equals MySQL query, pass in our update query. or die. If there was a result, echo success. Do a break tag. The title of this photo has been changed to, and then we'll wrap it in some strong tags. We're going to grab the value, once again that variable, the title, and put that in strong tags. Okay, so if the database was successfully updated, we're going to echo success. The title of the photo has been changed to your new title. Okay, so that takes care of changing the database. But remember, we're going to do this with Ajax. So this will work just fine the way it is. Whoops, let me close out my form tag. This will work just fine as it is. But why don't we do it with Ajax? So we'll do script type equals text/JavaScript. Later, we're going to pull this into its own external file, but we'll keep it like this to kind of stay compact. And we're using jQuery, so we'll say when the document's ready to be manipulated, we will first get that form attribute. And we're going to get that, we're going to change the attribute of action and change it to nothing for now, because we're going to be doing this with jQuery, so we don't want it to post to a specific page with a full post back. Next, when the user clicks on that title tag, we want to remove it and then get the input tag, display the input tag. Okay, so get the H4, and you could even do like main H4 to be a little more specific. Be as specific as you need to, depending on what kind of web application you're making and where the H4 tags are. So get the H4 tag, and when it's clicked, run a function. And we're going to get the heading tag and slide up, and that's going to hide it, but kind of do it in a form where it looks like it's sliding up. So slide up, and then next input. So let's go over this. Where is it? Get photos. When the user clicks on it, we're going to get that heading 4 tag, hide it by sliding it up, and then go to the next tag, which is the input tag. So that next input, and we're going to slide that one down. So we're hiding the H4 tag, and then we're getting the input tag and showing it. Let's go ahead and view this in the browser to kind of give you some feedback. I'm going to click on it, and I must have had an error. Let's see what I did. Function is not defined. Maybe I did not declare my jQuery file correctly. Oh yeah, of course. Script/JavaScript. Maybe text. The funny things you do when you're doing a screencast, you get talking and then you just end up typing gibberish. All right, I think that'll take care of it. Let's. I'm in Firebug. Let's see if it does get loaded. Yeah, there it goes. Sorry about that. All right, so it's pulling on the images. So let's click on an H4 tag. Okay, so it slid up, and then our input box became visual. Now, we haven't written any code to actually update the database just yet, and that's what we're going to do right now. So we will do get the unordered list with an ID of photos, and remember that's the container for each of those photos. And let's get the input box, and when it's changed, anytime that value is changed, we're going to update the database. So when it's changed, we'll create a function. And let's create a few variables. Let's create var ID. It's going to be equal to this. I'm going to write this down, and then I'll go over it with you. This.parent li.find.attribute. All right, so let's go in and see what we're finding. When the input tag is changed, we're going to get this, meaning get this input box, go to its parent, so find its parent, that's an li tag, then get the image, so find the image right here, and then extract its ID, the value of whatever is in the ID. And remember, I stored the actual ID of that photo in the database within the ID field, okay? So it's just kind of a place that I could store that value so that I can retrieve it. So we're going to store that in a variable called ID. Let's do another one, and I'm going to store a variable called this param, and it's going to be equal to get this, and it's going to be equal just to that input field. Now, I'm not positive if I'm going to use it or if it's going to be necessary, but I'm going to create that anyways because I can't exactly remember what I did the first time. Let's do var title, and that's going to be equal to get this dot val. Val is equal, as you would guess, to the actual value of the input field. So if the user put Frank into that input field, title is going to be equal to the string Frank. Okay, so we've gotten that. Now let's just create the AJAX. Let's create the fun stuff that's going to update the database asynchronously. So we'll do $.ajax, and there's a few parameters that we're going to pass in. The first is going to be type, and then we're going to do a URL. The URL is equal to the file that's going to perform the operation. We're going to have data, and we're going to have success. So the type is going to be a post. It could be, get or post. It can be a bunch of things. The URL is going to be this change photo title right there. So this is going to be the file. Let me get that value. This is going to be the file that actually performs our operation. So put that in quotes. We're going to separate each one by a comma. Now the data is going to be the value that we actually send over to change photo title. Now if you remember, this is expecting to receive from the post a title and an ID, so I need to make sure that I send that over. And the way we're going to do that is we will do, we're going to send over title equals, and then I'm going to append the ID variable that I created. So we're going to send title equals ID, and then title equals title, and then the ID equals ID. And that's the specific information for that specific photo that we're passing over, okay? So title equals title, and then we're going to and ID equals, and then add on ID. And then finally, we're going to do a success. And success is a function that runs if the operation was completed successfully. And we'll do function, and within it, we're going to pull response. Now, that value, that variable, is going to contain whatever is returned from changephototitle.php. And for now, let's just do, let's do this. When it's completed, we're going to get all of the input fields and slide them up. So we want to make sure that no input field is showing when this is finished. So get those, and then get this param, meaning get that input field. Now, I don't think I think we might be able to just use get this. I'm not sure. We'll come back to that. For now, we're positive that this will work. So get this.param.prev, get that h4 tag. So we're going to the input tag, go to the one before it, and get that heading 4 tag. And we're going to change the text property. We're going to change the value to title. And then slide that down. All right, I'll go over this. I know if you're a beginner, this might be really confusing. Just keep watching it, because sooner or later you'll go, oh. And then if you're more advanced, I'm sure you guys completely get this. So when the operation has been completed successfully, go ahead and get rid of that input field, because we don't need to see it anymore. And then get that heading 4 tag that we hid up here, and we're going to change the value of it to be the new title, meaning whatever the user entered into that text box. And we're going to show it, and we're going to slide that one back down. Let's view this in the browser and see if it's working. We might have forgotten something, we might have not. So I'm going to change this, click on it. I'll wait for it to finish loading. Alright, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to change it to man sleeping. I'll tab off. And the text box slid up. It might be a little framey because of my screencast program. So I'm going to hit F12 and go to my console. And sure enough, it did create that post. Now, if you look at what was sent over, it was sent ID equals 2 and title equals man sleeping. Now, remember the database, it updated the database with the new title. Remember, title, this is what I just entered. It updates the table and inserts the new title only on the row that has an ID of 2. And if I refresh this, let's make sure that it works. And it has. So you see how easy it is that we've updated this website using Ajax asynchronously, and it didn't take that much work, and that's partly due to how fantastic jQuery is, and that's why we cover it so much on this site, because if you were using standard JavaScript, trust me, it would take many more than 4 lines worth of code to accomplish that. So fantastic. Now, what I want to do now is create just a little bit of feedback, maybe at the bottom, to let the user, or maybe at the top, to let the user know, congratulations, your title has been updated. So we'll do it still on the success, and I'm going to do get that response div that, remember, we created in the CSS, and we're going to fade it in because I initially set it to hide, and we're going to fade it in over the course of about a second. We're going to empty it. That means I'm going to get rid of any information that's currently within it, and I'll explain why in a minute. And we're going to append response. And lastly, I'm going to prepend, and I'm going to prepend a span tag. I'll give an ID of X, and the value will just be an X. Oh. Okay. Get our response div at the bottom. When the update is completed, we're going to fade it in. And then we're going to empty it, because if they update more than one photo, if we didn't have this right here, it would append, congratulations, your photo's been updated, and then another one, congratulations, your photo has been updated, and then a third one. So we're going to get rid of any HTML that's currently nested within that div, and we're going to append what was returned from our change photo title. So if we go here, this is what was returned. Echo success, the title of the photo has been changed. So that gets returned, and we display that within our div. And then last, I'm going to prepend just a little letter X. And remember, with the CSS, we place that at the top right portion of that div so that the user can remove it. In order to remove it, do it right here. We will get span with an ID of X, and when that's clicked, we're going to run a function again, and we'll get the div with an ID of response that fade out slowly. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory. When that letter X is clicked, get that container div of response and get rid of it and hide it. And that should be good for our JavaScript. It's not as clean as I'd like it for it to be, but kind of doing this quickly. Let's copy it right there. I'm going to create a external JavaScript file, and we'll call it my script.js. Paste that information in. And go back to my index. I'm going to get rid of that. And now I'm just going to import that script file as well. And I called it my scripts. Or is it my script or my scripts? My script.js. Okay, we're just about ready to review everything that we have. The only last step we need to do is actually add that response div that contains the success information. So we'll do div id equals response. And the class is going to be hidden initially. Remember, we set up that CSS style in our document to hide it. And we'll just auto close it. So let's view it in the browser. I'm going to refresh the page. I'll click up here, change this to a text box. I'm going to change it to little bunnies, or little binnies, little bunnies. Tab off. It updates the database and then gets rid of the input tag and brings the h4 tag back. If we scroll to the bottom, success. The title of this photo has been changed to little bunnies. And I'm going to click on that X to get rid of it, and it fades out. So, pretty cool. It didn't take that too long. Did a lot of explaining for some of the newer people, but it really amounts to writing just a little bit of information that pulls from a database and just a little bit of jQuery to call some AJAX that updates this. Now, for those of you that only wanted to learn how to do that, you're done. You can finish it, rewatch it. I'm going to go one step further and just create a slightly just a very simple login form, because the way it is right now, anyone can update that database, okay? And we really haven't done enough validation to allow that, nor would we want that. So for an admin section, we need to have some kind of login functionality that only allows you personally to edit this. And then maybe you could set it up where if the user hasn't logged in, they can't update this information, but if they have, then they can update that title. So, for those of you that want to continue on our journey, let's create a new item, and we'll add it, and we'll call it login.php. I'll add a div ID called login form. And within it, we're going to create a form tag. The method, of course, is going to be post, and the action is going to be called confirm. We'll make it very obvious. Confirm login credentials.php. And within it, we will do h2 login. And then within a p tag, we'll do username, and then an input type equals text. The name is going to be username, and we're adding this name attribute so that we can access it from that confirm login credentials file. Okay, and the next one is going to be called password. Input type is going to be password, and we'll change that to. Now remember, when we created our table, we had some extra information like first name and last name and email address. I'm not going to go into that since this is taking so long, but you obviously would want to set up a section where you could actually create a new user in the database. We're just going to assume that you set it up yourself. And then finally, we're going to do our input tag, type equals submit. Value is going to be login name is submit. Let's view this in the browser, see what we get. Okay, so we have some basic styling. Let's just do a little bit more just to make it a little pretty. You know what I'm going to do? Just since this is appended to the actual tutorial, I'm going to store the style internally. And I have some styles that I wrote down for myself to remember. We'll do text align. Center, that's going to center everything on the page in old browsers. Font family, Helvetica. We're going to get that login form div. Set padding of 1em. Give it a background color of a light bluish gray. Set the width of it to 260 pixels. Give it a top margin of 3ems, and then left and right of auto for modern browsers, and a bottom of 0. And then we're going to align the text back to the left. The text align center on the body element is actually a hack for old browsers that will, this hack incorrectly centers all elements on the page. So it's a way to center your container or your login form div on those, on that old browser, because it won't recognize left and right auto margins. Then to compensate for modern browsers, we need to align that text back to the left. I think that might be all I need. Let's view it. Okay, only thing is I don't have that background color. Ah, there it is. Need to be capital. View that again. Okay, so we have, you know, just basic functionality that will work fine for what we need. Click on it. Nothing's going to happen just yet. Now, as it just said, we need to create our confirm login credentials page. So I'm going to copy that right there, add a new item. Okay, get rid of all of this. Let's create a couple variables. The first one is username, and we're going to pull the value from the post. So we'll do post username and password equals post password, and we'll wrap that in MySQL real escape string and do it for the same for the one on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to connect to the database, so I'm going to go ahead and include that database.php file again that creates our initial information. Require database.php. Let's create our query, and we'll do select ID from users where the username is going to be equal to the username that was entered into the text box, and the password is equal to whatever was entered into the password section. And then close out the quote and end the statement. So select ID from users. Now let me make sure I named that correctly. Within our DB table, we have photos and users. So that's correct. Select ID from users only. Select the only ID where the username is equal to whatever was entered into that text box, and the password is equal to what was entered into the password text box. So we'll do if, and in parentheses we'll do MySQL num rows. This is going to return the number of rows this is going to get the number of rows that was returned from that query. And I'm sorry, I forgot to actually run the query. We'll do result equals MySQL I query and pass in Q or die. Whoops. All right, so if the number of rows that was returned, and we'll pass in that, is equal to 1, so if it's 2, this information in here won't run. If it was 0, it won't run. If it was 10 records that was run, it won't run. Sorry, I forgot to close out the parentheses. So if the number of rows was exactly 1, we're going to redirect them back. We're going to redirect them to that photos page. So the location is going to be index.php. Else, however, if it was anything else, I'm sorry, else, let's do a header, and let's just refresh the page. That's fine for now. We'll just send them to this page again, or we could just refresh it. It doesn't matter. So if the number of rows was returned, we are going to send them to that photos page. Else, we're just going to refresh it. So what we're going to do is when that photo page loads, we need to find a way to ensure that the user is logged in. So what we're going to do is when we send them to that page, we're going to set a cookie on the browser, and the value is going to be authorized. And I'm going to set, I'm sorry, the key is going to be authorized. The value I'm just going to set to the number 1, and the expiration is going to be 0. Now, when an expiration is set to 0, that means as soon as the browser is closed, their cookie will expire. Okay, so if 1 row was returned, they were logged in successfully. Let's send them to the photo page and set a cookie while we're at it. So let's go and subsequently, this is our photo page, and let's do some checking to see if a cookie was set. And we'll do that at the very top, even before my doc type. And we're going to say if there wasn't a cookie, we'll use the global. Why do I keep doing 3 O's? If there wasn't a cookie with a key of authorized, if you didn't find one on the user's browser that's accessing this page, and it's not equal to 1, header, and once again, we're going to relocate them to login.php. Okay, so the global cookie, if you find that cookie with the name of authorized, if that cookie isn't equal to 1, we're going to send them to the user page. So let's see if that works now. I'm going to load in my browser index.php. Syntax error. Let's see what I left off. Left off parentheses. Okay. Refresh it. Okay, so I refreshed it. I did not have a cookie on my computer, so it just sent me to the login form because it assumes you're not currently logged in. Let me actually log in now. Let's create something arbitrary, say TomTom, log in, and it didn't work. So I just refreshed the browser. You could, create some kind of error that says enter your username or wrong username, whatever. I'm just going to refresh it. Or I'm going to enter my correct username, and I think we called it username and password. I think I might even have had an underscore. Log in. Okay, and it sent me to that page. So let's go over exactly what happened. Login.php. The user enters their information into the username and password form and clicks submit. That form has an action of confirm login credentials. So we go in here and we store what they entered into those two text boxes into these variables. We create a connection to the database, and then, whoops, let me get rid of that. Then I create a variable called Q and make that my query, and we're selecting the ID, which is just something arbitrary. We're just selecting anything from my users table, but only return the ID where the username is equal to what the user entered into that username text box, and the password field is equal to what was entered into the password text box. Now, if a result is going to actually run that query, if anything's wrong, it'll die and give us a SQL error. Now, if the number of rows returned was exactly 1, we're going to create a cookie, and we'll call it authorized, set the value to 1. I could set the value to Joe. You can set the value to whatever you want. And we're going to set it to 0, meaning when the user closes the browser, get rid of that cookie. And go ahead and redirect them to the proper page. But if it doesn't return any rows, just refresh that page. Then when we load our main page, we're checking get the cookie with the name of authorized, and if it's equal to 1, so if there's a cookie named authorized equal to 1, allow the page to load. But if there's not, see that exclamation mark, meaning if there's not one, send them back to login.php. So the final step I'm going to do is create this log out button. Now, log out, we need to send them back to the login page, but we also need a way to delete that specific cookie. So what I will do is, I'm just going to do this quickly, and we'll do it through a query string, which probably isn't best, but it's okay. It really doesn't matter. We'll do a query string of logout equals 1. And in the login page, I need to do a little bit of PHP as well. So we will do if get, to get the query string, the value was logout. Remember, when we sent it, our key is logout, our value is equal to 1. So get the, where is it? Get logout, so the key is going to be logout, get that, and if it's equal to 1, once again, we set that logout equals 1, so if that key has a value of 1, we're going to get rid of that cookie. Now, the way you get rid of a cookie actually is identical to the way you set the cookie, but you need to set the expiration date of the cookie to before the current time. So we would do set cookie, and we need to make sure the same name is authorized. The value is 1, that's fine. But now, the expiration date, we're not going to set it to 0. We want it to expire immediately. So we can do a time minus 1 hour, which is 3600. Close that out. Pretty simple, right? So let's refresh it and see if everything works just perfectly. I'm going to click log out. It's going to send me back to login.php with my key value pair. Now let's go ahead, and this page checked to see if logout equals 1. So let's go back to index.php and see if it allows me in. No, it didn't. It redirected me to this page, and that's because there was no cookie anymore. Now, there are some, obviously, many more sophisticated ways to do this, but this is a quick, simple way to create a login form. I'm going to log in back again. Okay, and that's our page. We click on it. Bunnies. Doing a final wrap-up. Click off. It updates the database asynchronously. It gives us this success field we can get rid of. And that has been your tutorial. So it was a long one. This is really kind of a start that you need to get much more sophisticated. Obviously, it's beyond the scope of an hour-long screencast, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you can make this better, and maybe we'll do a part 2 that's much more advanced. So thank you so much. Do me a favor. If you guys love these screencasts, support them in any way that you can. The best way to support it, just read nettuts.com. Subscribe to the RSS feed. Subscribe to the videos feed. Leave a few comments. If a tutorial helps you, dig it or stumble upon it or add it to D-Zone or add it to Delicious. You're getting a lot of this for free. So if you enjoy it and it's helping you, spend 30 seconds just to dig it. And we will be 100% happy. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. This is Jeffrey Way, signing off. Bye.